when we're looking at this, it says a slope of 1. So is that slope positive or negative? Positive. So is it going up or down? Up. So which two can I eliminate? A. That one's going down and D is going down. And the y-intercept is -1, right? So which one starts at -1? B, right? See how this starts at -1, it goes up 1 over 1? B would be my answer. Does that make sense? Make sure you guys put your devices away. This is only going to take like 30 minutes tops.
Do you have a pen?
Yeah. Alright. This one, I'm not sure. Remember, I'm overly preparing you, so since this was on a practice test, this is Algebra 2. I'm not sure if it's going to be on it, but as long as you know, you need to know how to simplify or factor. So first we see, is there a number that can go into 36 and 16? 4, right? So we got to divide that number out. And so remember, 4, when I divide a number out, it's always on the outside. What is 36 divided by 4? 9x squared minus what's 16 divided by 4? 4. Now, what do you notice about those two numbers, 9 and 4? What type of numbers are they? Perfect squares, right? See, so remember that difference of perfect squares? If you don't remember that, you can always do ACB and factor. It will be the same thing. So, but if you see 2 subtracting and it's 2 perfect squares, all you have to do is take the square root of each of them. So, what is the square root? It's not big enough. What's the square root of 9? 3. So we know 3 is going to be on the outside. And then remember, x squared, if I was going to divide it in 2 equal parts, what's half of 2? Just x and x, right? And then remember, you have 1 plus, 1 minus. And then what's the square root of 4? 2. Cool. Now I do this one right here. So what numbers go into 12 and 8? 4, right? So I'm going to divide 4, put it right here. And then what do you end up getting when you divide this? 3x minus 2. Then the last thing you do is you see, okay, it has to be the whole parentheses. See how these things are all being multiplied? Anything divided by itself is 1, or it can cross out. So which ones can I eliminate? Or these two, remember they have to be exactly the same. What else? 4. And so what's left over? 3x plus 2, right? Over 1, which is just 3x plus 2. So Sydney, I originally said, yeah, 2, but that was. Does this make sense? Honestly, I mean, you can let me know if you see something like this, but I don't think you will. I think you do need to know how to factor that. All right, what does mode mean? How often it appears, or the number you see the most. So which one do you see 24 the most? D, right? Okay, nice. So what are different ways that I can find zeros? ACB, which is factor. Vertex form. We can get in, or we can do completing the square. We can do in your, remember, only 10 questions are non-calculated. So today after school, if you don't remember, we can put it in our calculator and find what our y's are what number. 0. You can look at your table. You can also always use the quadratic formula. And I would say if you're not comfortable with this sort of stuff, and like you're not confident with it, always use the quadratic formula when anything. I would use it when a is greater than 1, so that way you don't mess up. So I would use, every time you see a 0 solutions, and you're comfortable with the quadratic equation, know how to put that in your calculator, I would use that.
Can you solve this one using this question?
Sure. So what is your a here? 2. And so when you're factoring, I would need to divide it by 2. When you're using a quadratic equation, that's why you don't need to do it. You just need to make sure everything's on one side. What's your b? 4. And your c? -16. And then you're given this equation on your formula sheet. Negative b plus or minus b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. And do y'all remember how to put that into your calculator?
Yes.
And we'll go over this afternoon math, and you go over to the fraction tab, and it looks like this, n/d. And it will look something like this where you can type it in. So all the B's, I'm going to put 4. All the A's, I'm going to put 2. And all the C's, I'm going to put negative 16. And so remember, you use plus or minus the first time, and then you can highlight it and change it. Or you can always do it by hand. So I have negative 4 plus or minus. What's 4 squared? 16. And what's a negative and a negative make? Plus. What's 16 times 2? Times 4. What do you end up getting? 32 and then times 4. 128. All over. So remember, you can do it in your calculator easily. This is just in case it's a non-calculator question. Negative 4 plus or minus. What is 16 plus 128? 144. All over 4. What is the square root of 144? 12. And so now I break it into the plus and minus. So what's negative 4 plus 12 over 4? So you end up getting 8 over 4, which is what? 2, right? So we know 2 is an x-intercept. Then we can do it over here. Negative 4 minus 12 is negative 16 over 4 ends up being negative 4. This is the longest way to do it. I would do it whatever way you're comfortable with. So if you're comfortable with putting it into y equals and finding whether y's are zeros, do it that way. If you're comfortable with plugging it in the quadratic equation, do it that way. Unless they say to solve it a certain way or it's like open-ended, do it whichever way you feel comfortable. You could take your answers, plug them in, figure out which one equals 0. Just don't go overboard. Don't do all of the answers. All the ways. Does that make sense, how to do it by hand in case you're given that quadratic equation? All right. This is saying a 6th cousin John, here's John, it's 71 inches, right? They want to find the difference. What does difference mean? Subtracting. So they want me to subtract 2 answers in the range. What does range mean? It's your y. But what about when I have just a list of numbers? Max minus the min, right? So the max minus min, or largest minus the smallest, of the height of the first 5 cousins and the range of all 6 cousins. So let's start with the first 5. So looking at the first 5, what's the biggest number there is? 64 and the smallest? Yeah. So then when you subtract them, what do you end up getting? 28.5. Now let's do all 6. Or is it 7? So this is, oh, no, it is 6. So now what's the biggest number? 71. And when you subtract it from that, what do you end up getting? This one's not 28.5. What is it? 22.
Is that a 6 or a 5?
This is a 5. So that's the first 5. Then this one, you end up getting 29.5. But you can see that's an answer right there. They're trying to trick you. Because they want you to find the difference. They want you to subtract these 2 answers. What do you end up getting? 7. So just be careful of what they're asking. So if they're asking for range and it's coordinates, then they're talking about like the y-axis. But if it's just a list of numbers, then you know they're talking about the max minus. Does that make sense? All right. They just want us to solve for what letter?
W. I know W.
W, right? And so what do I do first? Subtract 2L, right? Okay, it looks like 21, but it's 2 times length times plus 2 times width. So I end up getting P minus 2L equals 2W. Then how do I get W by itself? Divide by 2. And so what's your answer? B. So the answer could look like that. It could also look like this, where you would have to divide each one by 2. And so what would happen here with these 2's? They cancel out. So the answer could also look like that. Just be aware of that, but since that one doesn't exist, we know this is. But on a different practice test, the one that I gave after the open-ended questions, it's the same question and that's the answer. Did you have a question? Okay. When we're adding radicals, first you simplify. Could I simplify radical 6? But it only goes into what two numbers multiply to 6? 3 and 2, and they're prime. So I actually couldn't simplify it anymore. And now that they're the same radicals inside, I could just add the outsides, right? So what's 6 plus 4? 10. And do I add the insides? No. And see, they did that right there to try to trick you, but you know better than that. Does that make sense? Yeah. So make sure you pay attention to not. So which is not a function. So what type of test do I have to do? Vertical line test, right? And if it hits more than once, it's not a function. So when I go like this, beep, beep, see how it hits twice? Is it a function? No. So since it asks me which one's not a function, that's right. Be careful with the wording and the nots and things like that. All right, so first of all, is this a solid line or a dotted line? So what should be under the inequality sign? A line. So which two can I look at? A and D. That would have to be a dotted line. Then, here's Elijah right here, right? And so is it shaded above his head or below his head? Above his head, right? So that means Y has to be. So which one is Y, B, B, C? C. And technically this is like 1x, so this look is 1. Remember, you could always take a point, if you're between two answers and you forget or you want to check your work, take a point in the shaded region and you could plug it in. So like this point right there, I'll take any point 0, 1. And so I could plug in 0 for x and 1 for y, and it should make sense. Is 1 greater than or equal to 0? Yeah. So that's how you check your work. You could take a point in the shaded region and it should make sense into your equation. That's just to check your work. All right, classroom has an area. What does area mean? Length times width, right? So that's my answer. So they're saying, what can I multiply to 2x plus 7 to get that answer? So first of all, when I do FOIL at least, it's the first times the first one. So I know 2x times something has to equal 6x squared. Which one? What 2 times what equals 6? 3. So which 2 can I eliminate? A and D. Then I know I'm going to have to multiply to a negative number. Is there any way I can take 2 positives and somehow get a negative answer? No. So which one is it probably? You want to just double check. So this is 3x minus 3. So what 3 methods can I do to multiply? What else? Box distribute. Box method, right? So here's 2x plus 7. Poor couple broke up. 3x minus 3 has to distribute. So when I distribute, what's 2x times 3x? 6x squared. 2x times negative 3. Negative 6x. 7 times 3x. 21x. And 7 times negative 3 is negative 21. When I combine my like terms, I end up getting 6x squared plus 15x minus 21. Is that my original answer? So I know. So make sure like you flag, and remember you have sticky notes. So even like maybe even go through the test, especially those 10 questions, and as soon as you get it, maybe put sticky notes of like what equation you're supposed to use for which. Because your reference sheet is on the computer. Yeah. All right. First of all, what shape is that in? Parabola, which means it's what type of function? Quadratic. Which ones are not quadratic here? A and B, they're linear. So, remember, this constant is always your y-intercept. So what is the y-intercept here? Positive 1. So which one has a positive 1? Remember, you can always type it into your calculator and look at the graph. You can take a point and plug it in, but always do that stuff last. So like once you get the answer, move on and flag it. Just make sure you get through the test. So I had someone do like 10 questions and guess on like 50 because he didn't have time. So you want to make sure you pace yourself. All right, the y-axis. What does it represent? Price in dollars. So if it was price in cents, it would say like 650 cents. But it doesn't say that. Okay. Vertex. What are different things I could use to find vertex? We can go from standard to vertex form by doing what? We could do negative b over 2a, that part of the quadratic equation, then plug it in.
Blanks.
Yeah, completing the square. So get from standard to vertex is completing the square. You can also do, on your calculator, what could you try to find? Think of Miss Klein.
The bump.
The bump, right? So the bounce or the bump. So you can type the equation in and just go on the table and find the bump. Do you need to do every single one of these? No. Do whichever is going to, like if you're a fast calculator person and you have a calculator, go for the calculator. So when you end up doing this, you end up getting, I'll do negative b over 2a. So what is b? 8. So negative 8 over 2, what's my a? 1. What is negative 8 divided by 2? Negative 4. What is that known as?
Discriminant.
No,
Or the
that's the y coordinate. Axis of symmetry. So they ask for the axis of symmetry, your x coordinate, your vertex. So which ones can I eliminate now? A, T. Then all I have to do is take my original equation and plug in negative 4 for every x. What's negative 4 squared? Positive 16 minus 32 plus 9. When you do all that, you end up getting negative 7. So which one's your answer? And so this afternoon, if you're coming, we're going over that calculator and the formula sheet. If you're not, I already put it on Google Classroom. I'm skipping 58. I didn't like that question. You're not going to see anything like it. So this is talking about the income. I would just do process elimination. So Todd always earns $20 per hour. Let's just look at this. How many hours is he working in that point? 10. How much money is he getting? So how much would he make an hour? If he makes $100 in 10 hours, 10 hours, that's 20. He gets same per hour no matter what. No, because look what happens right here. It starts getting a lot higher. So that's not true. Todd never works more than 60 hours. That's not true. It goes to 70. So what's your answer? Yeah, so after 50, you see how it's doubling? That's because it's, when you work a certain overtime, you get paid usually around twice as much, or 1.5 times as much. Teachers don't get that. All right. When you have f of x equals g of x, you're trying to find the intersection, right? So when we're going about that, you do elimination, substitution, graphing, but they're not even asking that. They're saying how many times did they touch or intersect? Once, right? Right here it just says once. So how many points would be the same? Just 1 point. So only one of these points would be the same. So one x and y would be the same. If they equal for every x, they would be infinite solutions. If f and g are the same function, also infinite solutions. And if they have the value for some of x, it would mean they intersect more than once. Which does not represent, what does domain mean?
X value.
X value. And so usually, remember when I see per, each, every, that indicates it's my slope. So that's your n. So like, if I get $10 per hour, hour is your domain. So they're saying which one would not really be a domain here? It's C. If there's 3 credit cards in Mark's wallet, that's not really a domain. All right. So this is transformations, and I want to make sure you guys can see, because I don't know how it's going to be written on your test. So I want to show you every way. So it could be written like this, where they're saying the transformation would be like this. And I would write this down. So if they're saying like minus h, if it's in parentheses, you know it's going right and left. So minus h is to the what? Right, minus h to the right, plus h is to the what? Left plus k? And minus k? Down, right? So they're just saying that f of x4 is added to it. So what's happening? Up 4. Yep. So, what does linear mean? Adding or subtracting, and we also know it's a line, a straight line. So if the population doubles, would that be linear? What would it be? Exponential, right? It's multiplying. During a viral outbreak, every infected person infects 3 more people. So if here's my infected person, they infect 3 people, then they infect 3 people. Is that linear?
No.
That's exponential. Just gonna read 70 pages a day.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's every day I'm adding 70 more pages. And this D is the same as B. So I invite 3 friends, and those friends invite 3 friends, and et cetera. That would be multiplying. All right, what does geometric mean? Multiplying, and you have that on your formula sheet. So if you see any words like that, make sure you look at your formula sheet. And so what's happening? So we know we're multiplying. Which one answer choices are not multiplying?
B and C.
They're linear, right? Then all I have to do, remember, y, you're given this equation, but not what they mean. And so, Roger, we worked on this yesterday. What does A mean? It's what we worked on yesterday. And you're like, yeah. What does A mean? In general. Anybody?
Initial value.
Initial, right? B? The growth or decay factor, right?
Oh, you're talking about.
Just the equation. So you're given that equation, but you don't. That's why this afternoon we're picking apart what each thing means. And so, what is your initial value in this list of numbers? 3. And then, what is it multiplying by? 2. And so, what's your answer? Remember, you can always plug them in. So if you plug in 0 for the first one, you should get 3 as your answer. If you plug in 1 for the next one, you should get 6. All right, next one's saying they want to make these 2 equations equal. So I have 4 to the x plus 3, and I want to find when it's equal to 1024. Easiest way to do it, you can either type this equation into your y equals and look at a table, or plug in each of these values and figure out when does my answer end up equaling 1024, and it ends up being this one right here. When I do 4 to the 2 plus 3, what is 2 plus 3? 5, and 4 to the 5th power, when you put that in your calculator, it's 1. All right. So see how it says relative frequency? That means like in general. So remember how we learned like given that I'm looking at the 9th grade class, what is the probability that they go to this club, right? But this is relative. They're just talking about the whole thing in general. So it says, what is the relative frequency of the boys who attended a club after school? So how many boys attended a club after school? 6. And it's going to be out of my total in general. So what is my total amount of people in this thing? 50. And then you just divide it. So if it was like given that, or it's a certain situation, then I would figure out what I'm dividing by. But if it's relative frequency and they're just saying like 1 out of all the people that took the survey, out of all these 50 people, what's the chances that I pick a boy in a club? When you divide this, it ends up being 0.12. If it asks for percent, what percent would it be? 12%. All right, what's our correlation coefficient? If you don't remember that, we're going over that for flex today, but what letter do we refer to as correlation coefficient? R, right? And so remember that you are going to need to turn your diagnostic on as soon as you get your calculator tomorrow, because R will not show up if you don't do that. So first of all, what type of correlation is it, positive or negative? Positive. So which 2 can I eliminate? C and D. And then which one? It's pretty strong, right? So which one's stronger? A. The closer it is to 1, the stronger it is. Same with negative 1. The closer it is to negative 1, the stronger it is. Okay, if Joe has experienced a slight loss of hearing since he got his new stereo, which of the following would imply causation between Joe's stereo and hearing loss?
B.
B. Yeah, causations, which some of them may be correlated. Remember, causation is one thing causes something else. Next one, factor. We need to find, out of these, what number is the GCF out of these 2? 5. And then if this one has 3 x's and this one has 2, how many do they share? 2, right? So the GCF is 5x squared. That should be on the outside. So which one is automatically my answer? C. If there was another one with 5x squared, remember you divide it. So what's 5 divided by 5? 1. And remember you just subtract the exponent. So what's 3 minus 2? 1x. And then 15 divided by 5, 3, and what happens with the x squares? Let's cancel, because 2 minus 2 is 0. That's 10. So this is the same thing we did like at the very beginning where I said it's an Algebra 2 lesson. So usually it's just going to be something like this. All right, see where it says completing the squares? If it says completing the square, usually the answers are given using completing the square. Doesn't matter really, if this was given to you, does it matter which way you use? No. But I'm going to make sure you know completing the square because usually they'll give you a step in completing the square. So completing the square refers to which method? The getting it to vertex form, kind of, that method, but the blanks, the weird way I say it. Blanks is completing the square, and so remember when you draw a square, it's a blank. So what do I do first? Add 35. Cool. Cool. And then, since a is 1, I don't need to divide anything, so I do x squared plus 2x plus what? Blank equals 35 plus blank. How do I get what goes in the blanks? And then what is 2 divided by 2? 1 and 1 squared. I put that in the blanks. And then how do I turn this into a perfect square? X plus 1 squared equals 36. Usually it will go up to this point. At this point will probably be an answer choice. So like at this point they would leave it probably like that. But if we were going to go about doing it, first of all, if I'm getting to vertex form, pretend it said get this into vertex form. What's the only extra step I would have to do to get to vertex form? Good. And so how would I do that? Minus 36. And so remember, vertex form, you're given that equation too. And so this would be vertex form. So what would be your vertex?
-1.
Yep, the opposite of here, and then the same as outside. So that's your vertex. But they don't want to know the vertex. I just want to make sure you can see that, and that's how you go about getting it. Here they just want the x-intercepts. So how do I get rid of a square? Square root. What's the square root of 36? And -6. And what do I do?
Get x by itself.
How? Subtract 1. So you end up getting x equals 5 and x equals -7. So your answer. But remember, if that's how the answers are, then it really doesn't matter which way you get it. If it's open-ended, though, you do have to like go about things. Does that make sense? I'm almost done.
How many open-ended questions? Like a yes,
Yes, remember 2 constructed responses, so 2 shorter ones with like a couple different parts, and then 1 extended response. So the 3 altogether. All right, what's irrational?
Irrational. Isn't it terminating or
Non-terminated, right? So you know those people that go on and on and on, and they don't even make sense. They're being irrational, right? They're going on. If you put it in your calculator, it should be going on forever and ever. In your calculator, it usually gets around like 7 decimal points. But it's also a number that can't be turned into a fraction. If I multiply this, I'm going to get a fraction answer, right? If it's a fraction, is it rational or irrational? It's a fraction. Yeah, rational means can be turned into a fraction. Now, pi is an irrational number, but when I divide pi out, what's left? 5. Is 5 rational or irrational? Rational. 9 minus a half is just 8 1/2. What's 10 times 3? 30. Is that a perfect square?
No.
No, and since it's not a perfect square, we know it's irrational.
Wait, how did you do B?
B is just 9 minus a half is just 8 1/2.
Oh.
And so I know that's a fraction. Yeah. All right, open-ended. I'm almost done. So this one's pretty easy. They're saying every 15 minutes something's happening with your temperature. What is happening?
It's decreasing.
By what?
15. Oh, no.
12. So this is like what a constructed response story would look like. So some of them will say explain. Some of them, if they just ask what is or what will be, just write, you don't even need to write a whole sentence. Just write the answer. So if the pattern continues of cooling, or the pattern of cooling continues, what will the temperature be at 2:15? I would just continue this on. So what's 15 minutes past 1:45? 2. And so what's 56 minus 12? 44. At 2:15, 15 minutes later, 32. When you subtract, you end up getting 32. So this answer, 32 degrees. If this pattern continues, what would it be at 2:45? I would just keep going. At 2:30, what would it be? Yep, 20. And then at 2:45, 20 minus 12, 8. And then this is to explain the pattern. So how you would go about doing that, as the x value increased by, how much did the x value increase? It increased by 15 minutes. The temperature dropped how much? The y value for temperature dropped 12 degrees. And then it says explain the pattern you use. That would be the pattern. That's it. Does that make sense? All right, one more. Eric is baking muffins to raise money for homecoming dance. He makes 18 muffins with each batter, but he gives one muffin each to his brother, his sister, his dog, and himself. Each time he makes a batch, which is kind of strange. Whatever floats his boat, right? So first I need to explain, they want N to be batches. How much does he actually make for the fundraiser each batch? 18. But how many does he take out each time? 4. So how many actually go to the fundraiser? 14. So this answer would be 14. No, because each batch, only 14 muffins are allocated for the fundraiser. And so make sure you just pay attention when it says right, just like if it's just one of the rules is right. But as soon as you see that explain, make sure you explain. And you don't have to go overboard either. I know you guys just took an English milestone. You don't need to go that far over. Use the rule to determine how many he would do in 7 batches. So what would I plug in for N? 7. What are you getting? You end up getting 98. So for that, all you would have to write is what? 90. Determine how many batches he would need in order to get at least 150. So we know 14N, and then we need at least 150. What sign is for at least? Greater than or equal to, right? Because if I need at least 150 muffins, I would need 150 or more. How would I get N by itself? Divide. And when you do that, you end up getting N is greater than or equal to 10.7. But can I have 0.7 of a batch? No. So how many batches is he going to have to make? 11, because it has to be greater. Even if it was 10.1, he would still need to make 11 batches. It has to be greater. Then how many muffins would he actually make? I'm just going to plug in 11 for N, and you end up getting 150.